When I arrived in Lert for the first time, it was a rainy day in the desert. The clouds were grey and weeping, and so were the people as they quietly scurried between their crumbling hovels, heads down and souls hidden from the world. The streets and homes were empty, yes, but the jails were always full. As I ventured down the city's central pathway, I began to see hundreds upon hundreds of armed guards, each sporting rows upon rows of polished metal teeth, if you would call them that stared past my soul with a cold and vapid gaze. They moved about in slow, grinding steps that were as powerful as they were lethargic, with every footfall besetting nearby ears with an ear-splitting series of screeches, like metal on stone. Suddenly, a rotten fruit flew past my head, narrowly missing it and instead hitting a nearby wall with a satisfying splat. "Down with Beni Enosh! Let us return to the mainlands!" the voice cried out before a flurry of steel shufflings cut his cries short. No one would see him again, but no one would care either, for they didn't want to risk joining him in his new home. Shortly after this incident had occurred and subsequently began to fade from my mind, one of the guards that I had seen earlier began to clank towards where I was standing. He was the same as the rest, yet different, with a far larger frame and a purple sash and plume that marked him out as holding a higher rank than the rest of his comrades. "Stranger," he said, in a roughened tone, "what business have you here?" "Stranger?" I recall myself responding. "No, not I. A traveller instead, writing of his journeys through these bountiful lands." "Bard or beggar, Lert does not take kindly to the foreign kind. You should leave while you still can." "Then I will not bother you much longer. Simply point me towards the direction of the main place, and I shall be on my way." "Ha! A stranger seeks an audience with Beni Enosh? Perhaps the world has gone mad," he laughed, jaw plate grinding with every guffaw. "Yes," I replied. "Will you take me?" "And risk death? Not in 1,000 years. Go, fool, leave here before I see you in the dungeons." I reached into my pockets, rummaging around the rough cotton interior until my hands met warm leather. I produced a wallet of 100 ost from my pocket, to which I noticed a visible change in the knight's demeanour. "Are you still afraid?" I asked. "As brave as a cow on its way to the slaughter." He paused for a second, weighing up the pros and cons of his situation. "But I can take that purse now, along with twice as much value in meat from your dead corpse tomorrow morning." "So you hope. Take me now, and further payment can be discussed at the end of this affair." And so I handed him the purse, and he took me to the main place of Lert. Both denizen and knight looked at the two of us with a sense of wary wonder, unsure of why any person of sound mind would ever be treading the path that I trod at that moment. Regardless of what they thought, though, I soon arrived at the towering gates of the main place's outer walls. 2 guards dressed in simple plate armour and a sheet of plain yellow fabric blocked the way, each bearing scimitars with blades the length of their own outstretched arms. After some unknown words were exchanged between them and my guide, the guards parted, allowing us entry into my destination. When I saw it then for the first time, I could see that it was less of a place, and more so a palace, with vast walls made of carefully carved sandstone that stood out starkly against the skyline of dusty beige boxes that housed the unfortunate remainder of this country's population. I passed through a grand door made of a wood that stood out as being older and more different than any other oak I had seen in a long, long time. Regardless of its origin, though, I walked through it and found myself in the opulent throne room of Beni Enosh. It was as magnificent as it was massive, with colossal walls draped in sheets of exquisite fabric adorned with gold ornaments, and windows holding tales and epics of bygone times beautifully portrayed in stained glass standing far above sandstone statues of the country's previous rulers, all lined up and polished to leave not a mark of time nor wear. Out of nowhere, 2 vast doors swung open at the opposite end of the chamber, and a man emerged from atop a large palanquin. He was a large thing of a man, with a body draped in a blinding spectrum of shot silks that spilled out onto the floor as they cascaded down his bulbous form. His head was shaped like an elongated ball, with a terrible rash running down the right side of his face that oozed and dripped all manner of liquids and humours as it made its course down his body, from his forehead to his right eye, blinded in a mess of red and white that's completed a portrait of disease so perfect I could never have imagined its existence anywhere in anything other than theory. "Knight, what is your place here?" he boomed, spraying a mist of saliva and blood across the giant chamber floor. Forgive me, your rotundity," the knight stammered. "This foreigner seeks an audience within your presence. Say the word, and I'll take him to the dungeons." Although I presumed he couldn't see, Benir still turned his face towards me, and as he did so I almost felt like I could see a glint in his one dead eye, all while his live one visibly widened for a brief moment as he said, "No, this man has travelled a long way to be where he stands now. Let him have his audience." Yes, sir. You may leave now." With that, my guide left me. I do not recall ever seeing him again. I sat with Benny and Noj and talked with him until the conclusion of our conversation's first dawn, upon which I collected a transcript from the scribe who had dutifully recorded our conversation on a papyrus scroll. As I left Lert, I felt as if I was being watched by every eye that was still attached to its owner's body. From behind semi-closed doors and pulled-apart shutters, I could see people closely watching me walk by with looks of both amazement and intrigue that I had come out of my meeting both alive and unscathed, with no record of there being any strange traveller in Lert, save for a few urban legends and whispered half-memories behind closed doors. I had long left Lert's gates at that point, though, and was wandering onwards in a dry, rainless place, devoid of history or memory. Thank you very much for listening to this short story I wrote for Heavenly Flesh. It relates to the upcoming video that I'm currently working on, which will be all about the Lands of Plenty, a region within my world where the magic system is practiced a lot more freely than it is elsewhere. Thanks again to Nade for making the brilliant art that accompanied this video as usual, and I'll see you all soon.